Hey everyone, hope you're doing well today. I wanted to talk to you about four quarterbacks that are at a fantasy football crossroads. So, what do we mean by fantasy football crossroads? Well, these are players that you're going to do as much research as you normally would, but I think there's a built in extra layer of decision making where you could decide that these players are a significant value, or you could decide that these quarterbacks are just guys that aren't going to help your team. They're never going to take that next step, whether that be due to the roster, their age, their talent level. There are a lot of guys that we wish were better, and some of them get there and some of them don't. So let's talk about one. Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers is someone that you might look at and say, wow, that's kind of harsh to have Jordan Love on a list like this to say that he's at a crossroads. Well, number one, I think we have to remember that Jordan Love did have the opportunity to sit for 2 years and learn behind Aaron Rodgers, and it paid off. He had a really nice year in 2023 in his first year as a starter. 2024 was fine. It just, he got a little dinged up, and the touchdowns and the interception, the ratio was just not what it was the year before. And he just didn't produce as much and looked like a little less of a difference maker than he did in 2023. That could be due to injury. It could be due to a lot of different things. I think the number one thing that you have to consider when you're evaluating Jordan Love is how much do you like Matthew Golden as a prospect, and how quickly do you think he can make an impact? And the reason I say that is because the number one reason that people were excited about Jordan Love last year was all of the receiver depth that the Packers had. And unfortunately, after another season has gone by, we've learned that it's really just the Packers having a lot of decent but unspectacular receivers, or guys that are a little one dimensional. Jaden Reed is a great Swiss Army knife, for example, but he's not a top dog number one receiver. That's just not the role he plays. Romeo Doubs is more of a steady as you go kind of guy, maybe a third receiver. He's excellent in that role. A number two receiver in a pinch. Christian Watson just can't stay on the field. He was basically the linchpin for the whole the Packers are stacked at wide receiver argument, and he just needed to stay on the field. And unfortunately, it seems like he may not be able to do that. So all of a sudden, the Packers have a need at wide receiver. They address it in the first round with Matthew Golden, who is a player that if you glance at his stats, it doesn't look like anything special, but he figured things out, it seemed, towards the end of his college career with 4 or 5 games to go. And that's interesting just because this could be an ascending player. And if that's the case, he could have number one wide receiver impact as early as 2025, as early as this year. And that would fill a huge need for the Packers on offense, arguably their biggest need. And subsequently, Jordan Love is going to benefit from that. Their blocking is okay. Rushing game is actually very good. People were a little unsure how Josh Jacobs was going to pan out. He had a nice season. So everything is set on the table for Jordan Love to have a year similar to 2023, less so than 2024. I hope it happens, and I think there's a lot of different things to consider, but I also think that it really just comes down to Golden. If you think Golden is a good player starting this year, then you need to maybe draft Jordan Love an extra round ahead of where you might be comfortable getting him, just to ensure that, especially if you're trying to go a little cheaper on quarterbacks. He could be one of those guys that ends up finishing in the top 10 that you could have grabbed at a very convenient time of the draft. Next up on our list is Dak Prescott, and I've been a bit of a Dak apologist over the years, although it's hard to deny he has a very uneven career, whether that be due to injury or supporting cast or just him not playing very well. We can debate that all day, but every other year he blows up and has a great season. 2 of the last 4 seasons, he's combined for 73 touchdowns through the air. So that's not nothing. And with the increased talent and the supporting cast, the offensive line is slowly but surely getting better. It's still shaky, but it's getting there. George Pickens is an insanely huge addition for this team. They sorely needed a second wide receiver last year. I have to look it up. I don't know if their second wide receiver even had 400 yards last year. I don't know. The running back room There's more depth. It's still not impressive, but there's a good mix of veterans and rookies there. Hopefully, they can figure something out. Everything around Dak is vastly improved. He just needs to stay upright and stay healthy. And I really think this is the year that he could blow up again. It's all there. The table is set. They've given him a lot of help. I don't think it's spectacular, but it's pretty damn good for a quarterback through the air. So I expect Dak to have a great season. If you're looking at this in the opposite direction, you might want to fade him. If you just think the Cowboys are a mess, Jerry's lost his mind, George Pickens has a bad attitude, he's not going to last the whole season without causing problems, then sure, fade Dak. I get it. He's disappointed in the past, but I just think this is exactly what you want to see from the Cowboys if you're considering drafting Dak Prescott. Because I'm getting to the point where I'm probably going to bump him up a bit. I might draft him around ahead of where he would normally go. I'm not going to throw him at QB 16 or something like that and forget about him. I don't think this is the year to do that. If there are other things going on where you might disagree and you might not want to take the plunge on him, I think he's a value this year. But again, a player to consider, is he going to put it all together finally? Is this, for dynasty purposes, is this going to be a consistent player? There are still some questions and still some things up in the air, but I would seriously consider drafting Dak as a backup, or if you're platooning QBs, I think he could be a stud. Next is Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. And like I said, three of the big reasons that someone could be at a fantasy football crossroads is age, supporting cast, or a question about their talent. For Kyler, I would say that the talent is a bit of a question, and the supporting cast is starting to become less and less of a question. They have now the highest paid tight end in the league in Trey McBride, who is one of the best tight ends in the league, period. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., who disappointed last year, but he still had a solid season. There's still a lot of potential there. And it was a receiver that Kyler desperately needed. They still need a second wide receiver, in my opinion. I like Michael Wilson. I just don't think he's that reliable. And they're going to have to do something in the backfield when James Conner finally hangs it up. However, I think that Kyler has more or less what he needs to succeed. This is similar to the Cowboys. You can move some things up or down in terms of quality. You know, we can debate the offensive lines. We can debate the running back rooms. But I really think that Kyler has enough. I wouldn't say that he has a star-studded cast around him. So that is important because I really like to see quarterbacks behind a decent offensive line with a couple of decent receivers and a decent running back. And I just feel like it's impossible for Arizona to have all those things at one time, just being the franchise that they are. I don't know. There seems like there has to be a rule where the Cardinals have a terrible defense and a so-so offense. That's just what they have almost all the time. And it's continuing, but Kyler is kind of part of that, right? I mean, this is a player that was drafted number 1 overall despite some size issues and some commitment issues. And I think this player is pretty talented, but I'm running out of years to wait on that one big season. And granted, similar to Dak, there were pieces missing. But Dak has done it with pieces missing, and Kyler has yet to do so. So that's how I differentiate those two. George Pickens and just that whole general comparison is why I'm higher on Dak. Kyler, I kind of put where I always put Kyler. He's a backup that in a pinch he can absolutely start for you. But at this point, I don't think we should expect fireworks. I think we should expect a guy that can throw a touchdown or two, run for a touchdown, and maybe run for 60 yards. Maybe more like 20 or 30 yards some weeks. But it's kind of hard to pin down what his potential is because we may have already seen his potential a couple years into his career. I give this guy a lot of credit because I just think that he's taken a lot of criticism, and whether it's justified or not, I don't think this organization is one of the better orgs in the league. So I think he's been fighting an uphill battle the whole time, but I also think that he's starting to run out of excuses permanently, and I want to see him get it done and be a top 10 QB, preferably a top 6 or 8 QB, without having every single thing go his way. And that's my big question about Kyler, and where I probably wouldn't move the needle much on him this year. But hey, there are people that think Marvin Harrison will take the jump. The blocking will get better, and he'll have a year again where he has about 30 passing touchdowns, 6 or so rushing touchdowns, 600 rushing yards, and now we're cooking. I just don't see it all coming together in one year for this player. But if you love the player and you love the talent and you're optimistic about the supporting cast, maybe take him half a round earlier than normal. Maybe this will be the year. And the last quarterback that I have on my list that's at a fantasy crossroads is Trevor Lawrence. And I think we have to have some real big boy talk about Trevor Lawrence. He's not Andrew Luck, and there's no shame in that. But that's more or less the projection and the name that was getting dropped a lot when Trevor Lawrence was about to go number 1 overall to the Jags. And he's had some trials of his own. I think the talent is not quite what we thought it would be, but I think he is a talented starting quarterback that will play in this league for a long, long time. There's no question there. The supporting cast has been okay. The coaching staffs have been kind of okay, kind of terrible. You hope Liam Cohen changes that. And this is sort of an organization that's been a bit of a clown shoes operation over the years, and Trevor Lawrence has had to deal with some of that. I think it's a bit overblown for Trevor sometimes. He's had 4 years in the league now, and people are still bringing up Urban Meyer. I mean, that was his rookie year. And I'm sure, it's not like he didn't learn anything. He played a season of NFL football. So that's so far behind him in the past that, I don't even think we can bring it up anymore. I think unless you're a serious Lawrence apologist, this Urban Meyer thing is way in the past. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't had obstacles. He certainly has. Questionable coaching, questionable personnel, questionable management of the team in general. We hope that changes as well with James Gladstone. I talked a lot about James Gladstone and the acquisition of Travis Hunter in my NFL draft video about the Travis Hunter trade. And that's something that's definitely going to help Trevor Lawrence. He has a 1,200-yard receiver going into his second year and Travis Hunter, and they have 3 running backs potentially at their disposal who can at least play the game and get some yards, even if they're not stars. Offensive line, again, still questionable. It's been questionable this whole time. You just hope that Trevor can overcome that a bit. And the talent level, I think, is pretty good. Like I said, it might not be what we thought it was, but this is a good player. So where does that leave us in fantasy? Well, I have a hard time denying the fact that this passing offense is loaded now. Sure, they lost Evan Ingram, and they really only have 2 notable pass catchers. But still, they have enough depth at the wide receiver position, and if Travis Hunter is in the ballpark of what people expect him to be as a receiver, then the sky is the limit for Trevor. And he has a real shot at 35 passing touchdowns this year. That's no joke. Now, the offensive line will have to keep him upright. He'll have to stay healthy. The running game is okay. It's not great. But with Liam Cohen there now calling the plays and having extra personnel that Liam Cohen no doubtedly wanted. I'm sure he wanted Travis Hunter for that other piece in the passing game. So you're looking at a guy who was a coordinator for Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. And now we have that same dude coaching Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas, and Travis Hunter. It's a great mixture. There's a lot of potential here. I would consider moving up Trevor Lawrence unless you're just kind of over the whole experience. You think the dude is just an average quarterback. There is no denying he has looked like a very average quarterback for a large part of his career so far. I think with these changes in place, we can take one more swing at it. I would draft him slightly earlier. If you get a platoon of Dak and Trevor Lawrence, I think you're sitting pretty. And you had all those rounds near the beginning of the draft to load up on other positions. I think that's a great way to go. Jordan Love might be a little more expensive. Kyler might be a little less expensive. So evaluate all of these guys as far as knowing that if you like any of them, other teams, other owners might like them just as much as you. Also, something worth considering, they might be sleeping on them and you might get them at a value. So these are players that I think in the quarterback list, you don't want to just relegate them to guys that you can get as backups or guys that you can just get if you're in trouble at quarterback and you waited too long. I would suggest looking at them with a much finer lens and seeing which ones that you might be a fan of and which ones that you're happy to throw back and let other owners take. So those are my 4 quarterbacks at a fantasy crossroads. What do you guys think of this segment? Do you like it? I'm probably going to do it for the other positions, but I think it's pretty handy. What do you think about these players? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know of any topics or players you want me to talk about, and I'll see you next time.